Shalom Avracha. This week we begin to read Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim is on the one hand the words of Moshe Rabbeinu, his independent original words. But on the other hand, it's a part of Torah Hashem, part of Torah that we received at Sinai, at Har Sinai. How can we put these things together? How can Moshe Rabbeinu's individual words be a part of Torah Hashem that we read together with Chamisha Chumshei Torah? That's one question. But another question is, how do we handle the differences between what Moshe Rabbeinu tells us and between what we learned in the Torah up until the end of Sefer Bamidbar? All kinds of slight differences, slight distinctions between what Moshe Rabbeinu says and between what we learned until now. How do we reconcile those differences between Mishnah Torah and between the rest of the Torah? I think the answer to both of those questions is latent in one specific difference that I want to highlight. In Sefer Bamidbar, we learn the reason for why Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't allowed to enter into Eretz Israel. Why did he have to die in the wilderness before entry into Eretz Israel? And the answer is, Mei Meriva, because he hit the rock instead of talking to it. There was a chait there, or some element of chait, and because of that, Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't allowed to enter into Eretz Israel. If we read Prashas Devarim, we see a different reason. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Gambi his anaf Hashem biglalchem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry at me because of you, because of Chet HaMeraglim, because of the Chet HaMeraglim, the Chet of Klal Yisrael, that regretted the whole episode, that they wanted to go back to Mitzrayim, that they didn't want to go into Eretz Israel. And because of that, Moshe Rabbeinu too wasn't allowed to enter into Eretz Israel. Le'mar gamata lo tavei shama. Also you won't be allowed to enter the land because of Chet HaMeraglim. So was it because of Mei Meriva, or was it because of Chet HaMeraglim? The answer is, there's different elements. On the one hand, there was a direct Chet of Moshe Rabbeinu, Mei Meriva. But on the other hand, this was also part of the general Gzeira of Klal Yisrael not to enter Eretz Israel. And as we know, that general Gzeira is also a Gzeira of Golus. Latent in that Chet, in that Gzeira, is also the Gzeira of Churban Abayis. The Churban Abayis that we mourn next week on Tisha B'Av is a Churban that began, like the Mishnah says, also this Chet happened on Tisha B'Av. This was the beginning of the Puranas, the beginning of the calamity that later on took the form of Churban Abayis. And Moshe Rabbeinu knows this. Moshe Rabbeinu knows that he's not coming into Eretz Israel, that the Dvar Hashem won't be complete. It won't be the same. Without Moshe Rabbeinu, we won't have the same level of Dvar Hashem, and ultimately, the Dvar Hashem will depart from Klal Yisrael. And how do we carry on? How do we carry on being the nation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of doing His bidding, of performing His mission, without His word being among us? The answer is Torah Shebe'al Peh. Says Rav Shmuel Glasner, the author of Dor Ravi, in the accompany, the introduction to Maseches Chulin, he says that's the point of Torah Shebe'al Peh. Torah Shebe'al Peh ensures that Dvar Hashem will continue to be with us, even though it won't be direct, but it'll be with us in the form of the Chachamim, the wise of each and every generation, that ensure that the Torah remains contemporary, remains relevant. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to continue to enact a Torah that was given thousands of years ago in a different world, in a reality which is completely detached from the reality in which the Torah was given. How is it possible to continue on to perform a Torah which was given so long ago? The answer is through Torah Shebe'al Peh, through the interpretation and the reinterpretation of the Dvar Hashem, which keeps the Dvar Hashem alive within us, keeps it contemporary, makes sure that it remains relevant. That's the idea of Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim is the words of Moshe Rabbeinu, independent words, original words. But those original words are not given in a vacuum. They're given in a context of the Torah, in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the Torah. It's Mishnah Torah. But it includes all kinds of variations, of interpretations, of chidushim that we don't learn, or that we wouldn't know just by reading the Torah till the end of Sefer Bamidbar. And those are presented to us through Sefer Devarim, through the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is the initiation, this is the beginning of the idea of Torah Shebe'al Peh. What Moshe Rabbeinu starts in Sefer Devarim, the wise, the Chachamim of each and every generation continue until this very generation, until our very days. And this is what ensures that even in times of Golus, we still have the Torah, we still have the relationship, we still have the representation of Dvar Hashem. So next week we'll be mourning the absence of the direct Dvar Hashem. We'll be mourning the absence of the revelation, of the relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu that ought to be revealed, that ought to be manifest in a direct Dvar Hashem. But our nechama, our consolation, is that ein lanu shiur ela haTorah hazois, that the Torah, the Dvar Hashem continues to be with us through ourselves, through our own wise, our own chachamim, through our own chachmei Torah Shebe'al Peh that begin with Moshe Rabbeinu and continue up until our own days. We should all have a wonderful Shabbos.